Shakespeare famously said, "What's in a name?" But I think that motorcycle manufacturers nowadays are using the term roadster fairly fast and loosely, because while the term is pretty vague, the authentic experience offered is not really relevant in most cases. That's not the case with the Yezdi Roadster, because even in its previous iteration, it was one of the more likable products from the company, as it sort of provided you that authentic old school feel, but with a little more character, a little more spirit. And for 2025, Yezdi claims that it has refined the formula, polished the motorcycle, and the experience is going to be far more enjoyable. So, does it deliver on the claim? And are there still some chinks in its armor? Now on the Roadster, the engine continues to be a delight. Now this is the same 334cc engine as before, and power and torque figures are nearly about the same. But now it gets the Alpha 2 treatment, and as a result, the engine has become a lot more wholesome. So in the city, when you keep the speeds in check at 40 km/h in third gear, fourth gear, it does so effortlessly. And even when you want to roll on the throttle and get to some serious speeds, it does so in a jiffy. It's lively, energetic, and a lot more fun now. It sits at 85-90 km/h in a rather calm manner. It is in the sweet zone then, with the revs hovering at around 5,500 RPM in 6th gear. But when you want to ask a little more of it, or say reach speeds up to 105, 110, that is where it starts to struggle. So anything after 6,000 RPM is where the engine shows some signs of gruffness, and the vibes don't become really extremely harsh or jarring, but they are slightly irritating, and those can be felt especially at the bars and at the pegs. So it's better to keep the pace in check at say 90 km/h and enjoy the experience. There are two riding modes on the Roadster, where the primary difference is to limit the speed to 100 km/h in Eco mode. It is more like a speed restrictor rather than a riding mode, as the throttle response isn't changed. Also, it doesn't remember the mode that you left the bike in. It automatically reverts back to Eco mode once you kill the ignition and doesn't stay in power mode. Hence, a memory functionality would have been more helpful for the future. Another irritating bit was the fueling being inconsistent on the bike. Roll on the throttle and you would feel a lot of sputtering across the rev range. Even when keeping a constant speed, there would be some hiccups experienced. Either this could be due to the bikes being ultra fresh without any mileage, or the fact that the DB killers were removed for a throatier exhaust note that ended up messing with the O2 sensor. Hopefully this issue doesn't exist once we get the bike for a thorough road test. Now the version that I rode for majority of the ride was the top spec one, and there are minor ergonomic differences, not a huge one to say decide between which one of the two you should get, but we'll get to that in a minute. So what remains the same on both variants is the seat height as well as the foot peg position, while the seats might just be a little different. So hopping onto the saddle even for shorter riders is no biggie, because it is fairly low accessible, and even reaching your feet onto the ground, that's not a problem. The foot pegs neutrally placed, so you can sit in a rather relaxed posture for hours on end, and you won't feel that sort of cramping as much. Where the real difference comes about is with the handlebar. So the top version gets this wide, flat, drag style handlebar, which sort of makes you sit in a slightly forward arching posture, and you are left in this sort of sportier stance. Now this is great in case if you're going to be using this bike for a spirited riding purposes, but the one that I actually prefer is the standard version, because on this version you get the hydrofoam handlebar, which has the controls raised and pulled closer to the rider. So you are sitting in an equally relaxed upper body posture as the lower. And now this is great for city riding, for touring, and is equally competed out in the twisties. Having said that, Yezdi will also give you the bike as stock with a pillion seat. Now in case if you want to make it a bobber like the Pro version that we were riding, it can be done very simply by just removing the seat, and they'll give you a panel to finish that off. So talk about customization, Yezdi has quite a lot to offer. Speaking of which, you get more than 50 accessories to personalize your Roadster with. And in case you don't want to break your head much, Yezdi has 6 factory custom kits to offer. I really like the short cowl on the bike I was riding, as well as the integrated backrest and luggage rack on offer. However, the clean tail look was also pretty cool, and getting the tack panel becomes all the more essential for a quick bobber conversion. Now, one of the areas where the earlier Yezdi Roadster seemed to falter a little bit, and we wish Yezdi did work its magic upon, is in the suspension department. So the bike rides a lot more cleanly, a lot more balanced, and it is a far more absorptive setup. It's not flush by any stretch of the imagination, but it still feels far more neutral. It takes in the bumps rather well. And for my weight, when I was riding the Pro version, I did find it to be bobbing a little bit initially, but you can tune the rear preload, and as a result, I bumped it up a little bit and it felt a lot more flat. And tuning the rear suspension is very easy. You can do it with just your hands, so you don't need a special tool for that. But having said that, you have to keep your expectations in check. So when you're going over the really sharp bumps, or when you're taking bumps in speed, it does have the potential to toss you off the seat. So keep your speeds in check and you will enjoy this motorcycle far more. The rabble-rousing spirit of the Roadster has been enhanced, as the bike is quick to steer and doesn't get unsettled easily. The wider tires give it that extra sense of stability when cornering hard, and the tires do not leave you wanting for more grip. Braking performance is also great for riding spiritedly, with ABS neatly calibrated for an all-round riding experience. The moment I laid eyes on the Roadster, and my immediate reaction was Harley-Davidson Street Rod. The dark look, stubby tail, and the headlight cowl give it that vibe. But the more you start to notice the bike, the more appealing it starts to look. I quite like the blue and green shades, as they complemented the dark underpinnings well. Now, while overall fit and finish levels and even the quality levels on this motorcycle have improved, they can be worked upon even further to raise the standards of the motorcycle. Not saying that this is not, say, up on par with its competition, but it just feels a little notch lower, especially when you consider that this screen, in order to see it on the go when the sun is out in its full force, is very hard to do so. So you have to scooch a little forward, cover it with your helmet and see it in the shadow. And when you look at this sort of welds on this rack style handlebar, it doesn't feel neat and clean. So the weld quality needs to improve on certain critical areas of the motorcycle. But overall, you can see a noticeable step up from the past, but there is still some work to be done. So the likability factor of the Yezdi Roadster has grown with this iteration. It's become far more wholesome, far more usable, far more enjoyable on an everyday basis, and yet it still has that Yezdi youthful spirit about it. Sure, in certain areas of this motorcycle, things can be improved, but as a whole, it's a more easy recommendation now if you're looking at a versatile 350cc retro roadster. And considering the recent GST revisions, this bike has become quite a lot more affordable. So getting this one home has become easier. So what do you think about the Yezdi Roadster? Do let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and share this video, subscribe to our channel, hit the bell notification icon, and we shall see you very soon.